Hi, BCAT viewers. We're here at Valley Nursery in Paulsbo. Justin Robbins, General Manager, and Maria Taylor, Custom Container Designer, are giving Planted a warm, sunshiny welcome. Maria and I will have a ton of creative tips for using and caring for gorgeous potted gardens in this episode. So whether you've got no garden at all, a tiny patio, or a vast landscape, we have something useful and fun for you today. Join us, would you? Container gardening is more popular than ever, indoors and out, so many options and styles. Valley Nursery specializes in container gardens and has a fabulous selection of pots. Maria Taylor, Custom Container Designer, is here with me today to cover the ABCs of containers and share some ingenious tips for choosing the right one. How about we start from the bottom up with the drainage holes, right?
Perfect.
When would you use a pot that doesn't have them?
Okay, so the only time I ever recommend doing that is if you have something seasonally that you're gonna plant in it, it's not gonna live there long term, maybe something that you're gonna change out often. Definitely houseplants can handle that because oftentimes they come with already a little plastic pot and you're gonna drop it into something that doesn't have holes and it can live and you can water it like this. You also can place a saucer into a container that could collect it and then you can dump that so it doesn't create a water bog.
Okay. I think what we want people to know is to not put rocks or gravel in the bottom of a pot and just say, oh, okay, it doesn't have drainage holes. I'm just going to be really careful about the watering.
Right. I don't know where that old wives' tales came in, but don't do that, okay? It's just going to create a sticky, slimy mess that just is like a perfect place for bacteria to grow, and then that's going to evaporate up into the root structure of your plant, and it's going to aid in the failing of what you have planted in there. So I wouldn't do that ever.
Right.
Always just soil to the bottom and plants.
A drainage hole.
Drainage holes.
Well, I've heard broken pottery shards, styrofoam peanuts, plastic bottles.
So many things.
Yeah, we're agreed. No, we're not going there.
Don't do that. Lots of drainage holes. If you need help, we can drill a hole for you at Valley, and just plain old potting soil is the best remedy for that.
Tell us about using containers outdoors year-round. What do we need to know about weatherproofing?
So there's a lot of containers that don't really like to live year-round outside. One of them is terracotta. It is a porous substance, and once the water fills up in it after the roots are wet, it's going to expand and then crack when it freezes, when temperatures freeze. So the best thing to use is something that's glazed, outdoor pottery. You can also use plastic. It does eventually kind of fall to the UV rays. There's also wood and metal that you can use also. But if you want to do the investment of having a very long-lived container, I would go with a large glazed outdoor pottery. This might last a season, but they're so much better as indoor containers, or even if you just have like a hot spot and maybe you move that pot into a sunroom type of situation.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. But so there's metal, baskets, concrete.
It's endless.
So lots of different types of pots that you can choose. I have a burning question for you.
Okay.
So pot feet, saucers, are they really necessary?
Okay, so aesthetically, they're pretty. They add a look, right? But they're also gonna work for you. They're gonna protect if you have a traditional wood porch. They're gonna add airflow underneath, and so that way that pot that you're watering isn't just draining directly onto the porch and then all that moisture. Where does that go? You can put it in here and you can dump it, and then that's really going to help the longevity of your porch. And you don't have to buy pot feet. You can use pieces of wood from a deck. You can use bricks. You can use anything. Just kind of got to get a little creative with that.
The variety of shapes of pots, I think, is really cool.
Yes.
What have you learned, though, about using the different shapes from your experience?
I would only ever look for something that has an open mouth. Anything that is gonna curve in and be more narrow at the top is gonna be really hard to transplant.
Oh, right.
Unless this is gonna live there for a very long time. I mean, think about if it's growing like this, the roots, you're gonna plant it and those roots are gonna expand. You're gonna have to go in and saw the roots in order to get the tree or the container or the plant out.
So transplanting is
just
problematic.
Non-existent. You're gonna probably have to break the pot to get it out.
Okay.
And you don't wanna do that because you spent money on a beautiful pot. So think about that. How long is that gonna live there in that container?
All right. Now for annuals and big pots.
Annuals and big pots. This is not a very good example, but it works for us, right? Because it's not as big. But if you have a pot, maybe it's really large and it fits beautifully on the sides of your house or your door, you can use one of these, which is called an upsy daisy, and you can put that in there and that creates a negative space down below. So then that way you have space for water to drain through and the plants to thrive on the roots on the top. And then your soil goes right there.
Okay, so if you have something that's shallowly rooted,
yeah. It will work that way.
And the roots wouldn't, if you just planted it normally in a big pot, the roots would get down and, but they wouldn't reach the bottom and the water wouldn't evaporate.
Exactly. So if you have a very shallow rooted thing or it's not gonna live in there for very long, and this has so much soil from here down, it can just create a bog, and what's it gonna do? Evaporate up into the roots. Probably kill your plant.
No plant death.
No plant death. We want you to be successful.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom about like hanging pots?
Yeah, sure. For annual hanging pots, I really like to go 14 inches or larger because that gives it more roots, more soil for the roots to thrive in. And then think about if you're gonna plant something that is a perennial, you'll probably wanna put less perennials in than you would annuals. Annuals are only gonna live until frost, but perennials have the opportunity to live year after year, and you'll have more success if it's planted in a larger pot that can accommodate the soil and the root growth.
All right, so let's transition to talking about plant supports.
Yes.
Typically with a pot, it's hard to get a trellis or a stake deep enough into the pot to support the weight of a climbing plant. Monsteras, for instance, are really popular like now. They like to creep.
Yeah.
What solutions might you have?
So you can use traditionally like a wooden stake, but we have also some really lovely trellises that can fit down into the container. Okay. And once that plant roots in, it will hold the trellis down. We also have these really cool moss covered stakes that make it so the plant, like a monstera, which has aerial roots attached to.
Like this guy?
Yep, exactly. Like this guy really works really nice. And you can create shapes with it too, because it's bendable.
Thank you for sharing your expertise with our viewers. And for the latest container gardening supplies and trends, visit Valley Nursery in Paulsbo. For more information, go to valleynurseryinc.com. Many people think of containers more like garden art or an extra flourish, rather than instrumental pieces of a landscape design. But today, Marie and I want to inspire planted viewers to integrate containers into their gardens. Maria, how are containers usually used?
Yeah, so the most common way we use containers is often on patios, porches, balconies, but also like they can create a formal entryway into maybe your walkway or garden spaces. They're really great on top of rock walls, popped next to ponds and docks.
They're helpful as solutions too for areas that can't be traditionally planted. What are some of those difficult spots?
For sure, especially if you have maybe a lot of hardscape or really poor soil conditions, a container can offer a space for the plants to thrive by giving it really great soil. If you have maybe too dry of soil, use a container instead of trying to dig through that hardscape, or it's too wet, use a container. Maybe you have a septic system or an old tree stump you're fighting with in your garden.
Very smart. So you like to use containers though as design features in existing garden beds.
I do. If you add containers to those, it kind of creates a dynamic like no other. I highly recommend it. You can create like a canopy of color with a beautiful Japanese maple or even another large garden tree in a huge pot.
tight spaces are a great place for containers. How do you approach close quarters?
So maybe you have two different scenarios here. You already own the plant that you need to find a container for. So then you have to kind of hunt down a container that'll fit in that zone. Or you find the container and then find a plant for that area, taking into consideration your light requirements and soil conditions, things like that. I like to do it that way because then it will fit better, and maybe then you find a beautiful narrow conifer that'll look good and grow there forever or for a while.
Yeah. One of the ways I like to use containers is if I've got a plant and I'm not sure where its forever home is. So I put it in a pot and I put it in that spot, and maybe I like it there, or maybe the plant doesn't like it there.
Yeah. That is really nice too. It adds interest and height in maybe an uncommon area that you would have that. Then you can move it later on and you don't have to dig it up. That's always a bonus.
Well, I have a mature landscape, and I will often take a pot that's on the small size, put it in a container, and then I can give it some extra love, and then bring it up to a size where then I know I have confidence I'll put it in the garden and it won't disappear and get, overtaken by something else.
Right, that's always a great idea because then it can grow, you can live there, you can see if you like it, then you can always move it, because digging up a tree is no fun. I'm in the process of digging up a Leland cypress and it is not fun. So you can move it, but also it's okay because it's your garden and you should be able to dig up whatever you want and create it and make it your own space.
Yes. Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think editing your garden could be a whole other episode because it's so important.
Yeah.
What about hanging containers and plant stands in the landscape?
Yeah, I really like that too. It's really fun. It's a different way to add interest, maybe some height, bring the eye up. You can pop a plant stand in an uncommon area. But I also really like to do is hanging baskets in lower levels of deciduous trees. Kind of brings the eye there and adds a pop of color where you wouldn't normally suspect it.
I love that, Maria. Thank you for all your clever ideas.
Oh, you're so welcome. I really enjoy, solving landscaping challenges for people and helping them become creative in their own garden space. It adds their own personality and interest by teaching them how to have successful containers. It's really fun.
Local Planted viewers can find those containers with personality by visiting Maria and other staff here at Valley Nursery in Paulsbo. Find hours and info at valleynurseryinc.com. We've talked about choosing pots and where to place them. So now let's get to the really fun part. Maria's going to show us 3 unusual plants and 3 tried and true plants that are great for container gardens and how to use them effectively.
Yes, I am. Okay, so she made me narrow it down to 3 unusual plants. We have a climbing hydrangea here for you today, Crocia cotoneaster, and a calicacia elephant ear. For interesting plants for your center pots, just to add interest, we have sun things and shade lovers.
I love that. Excellent choices. So show us how you use each of these things and what they bring to a container composition.
Okay, so we have the climbing hydrangea, which is lovely. It can handle part sun shade, thrives more in the shady areas. It has variegated leaves. This one is a standard leaf, but it also has a very strong vining backbone. So it's gonna add interest when it loses its leaves throughout the season. So that's a really great one for those types of spaces that you have. Next, we have the Crocia cotoneaster, and it is quite of a prehistoric looking plant, right? It's got really cool shape to it. They do get large. They can get 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, but it can handle pruning. And it just has lots of interesting movement and structure to it. So it's a really fun one for containers.
Love it.
Then we have the calicacia elephant ear, and we have a small one kind of tucked right here in this container. It likes sun. It does not like to be in boggy water, and it will just kind of grow and open up and be really cool. There's so many different calicacias out there, so they're a really fun one to look for.
I love that. Great choices. Now for the reliable go-to tried and true.
So those 3 that I really like to use are Japanese maples. They're easy to maintain. They're adaptable in most Northwest gardens.
they do require a larger container. So you're either gonna find a smaller specimen that you can start in a smaller container, or definitely get the right size container for the right size pot. Also, they do really well with root pruning and changing out the soil every couple years. So they thrive really well in a container. Then I also like to suggest the heuchera. They are an evergreen plant that likes to live in shady conditions. The darker foliage leafed ones can handle a little bit more sun, and they're evergreen, so they're really great. They kind of spill out the sides of containers. They have these lovely little fairy flowers on them.
Yeah, the bees love the flowers.
Yeah, so fun. Then I really like to always suggest for summer sunning containers is petunias. They are adaptable to the hottest conditions that you can give it, lots of sunlight, and they can handle the rain that we periodically have throughout the summer months. They also are slightly fragrant, so they're fun to stick your nose in.
We can smell them right now.
Right?
So that's your favorite annual?
That's one of my favorite annuals. Yeah, it just goes and goes and goes. And they also love the summer heat, so they just bloom and bloom and bloom. They're kind of go-to favorites.
Is exposure, soil type, how are
Yeah.
you combining these things? That's so important.
It is really important, and that's one thing you really have to look at. You cannot plant things that are shade and sun. They're just not compatible, I'm sorry. Like you cannot put a astilbe with succulents. They just require different soil, they require different light exposure, and one likes cool, dark, damp soil.
The astilbe?
No, yes, the astilbe. Not boggy, but definitely moist.
Yeah.
And then we have these succulents here that prefer dry, fast-draining, sandy soil.
Lots of sun.
Lots of sun. Like, you can't give it enough sun. So don't mix those together. So when you're planting, kind of pay attention to those types of things and the conditions of the plants, so that way your container can thrive in its best setting.
Great tip. So, bonus plant.
Ooh.
Plant that's both reliable and unusual. What are you gonna tell us?
My bonus plant, like my go-to one. Okay, I'm gonna have to say it's a fern. We live in the Pacific Northwest, and I love me a fern. We can have deciduous ferns, we can have evergreen ferns, there's giant ferns, there's small ferns, there's purple ferns, there's green ferns, there's so many things. And since everybody has a shady spot in their yard,
It's true.
a fern will look good in a beautiful container. Like right here, we have one mixed with a begonia and a hosta, and it's got a little purple leaf in it.
Well, I love your ideas. I know our planted viewers are gonna love your plant choices as well. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I encourage everyone to find their own little pocket of beauty in their yard and plant up something lovely that they enjoy. And if you need any help, I'm here for you.
I love that. And so besides Valley Nursery, one of our favorite places to find great container plant ideas is the Great Plant Picks website.
Oh, definitely. It's a great one.
And links for this episode are posted in the video description. Valley Nursery's tagline is great plants, great people, and the BCAT crew agrees. A big thank you to Maria Taylor for your creative ideas on container gardens.
You're so welcome.
And Justin, thank you for hosting us.
You're welcome. Planted viewers can find our PlantCast podcast on our website, as well as a list of in-person workshops. If you've got questions for us, come chat with a certified professional horticulturist at our Answer Shack.
And until our next episode of Planted, don't forget, the more you grow.
The more you'll know.
Links for this episode are posted in the video description.